The veil of stars. Since the earliest myths, the skies have been the mirror of our fears and dreams. Entire civilizations built temples, maps, and stories based on what they saw among the stars. What if, one day, the stars simply stopped? Looking back, in 2037, while the world spun distracted at its own pace, something began to change. Not with explosions, not with warnings, but with absence, an absence so silent that almost no one noticed. It was at the edges of the observable cosmos that the first sign emerged. A blackout, not of energy, but of presence. And as the weeks passed, the night sky grew unfamiliar. It was as if someone was pulling a dark veil over the universe. And everything that once glowed disappeared. The first alert didn't come from NASA or an orbital station. It was a young amateur astronomer in Oaxaca, Mexico, who noticed the absence. He was observing the Cassiopeia constellation when he realized that 3 stars were no longer there. No clouds, no interference, simply empty. Others began reporting the same. In forums, radio stations, and online transmissions, reports popped up from across the globe. Traditional constellations, those that guided navigators for millennia, were changing, disappearing. The La Silla Observatory in Chile was the first to confirm it officially. It wasn't an optical error. It wasn't a sensor failure. Stable class stars, with no record of unusual activity, had vanished instantly. No residual radiation, no explosions, no trace. It was as if they had never existed. Perplexity spread like a cold wave among scientists. Some tried to argue it was a galactic occlusion phenomenon. Others suggested massive gravitational collapse, something that defied standard astrophysical models. But no explanation could account for the total absence, for how the darkness seemed alive. And when a second constellation disappeared, this time visible to the naked eye by billions around the world, fear spread beyond just astronomers. The sky was dying, and with it, the ancient feeling that there would always be something watching us back. With the disappearance of constellations, the night sky became a source of unease. Humanity, long accustomed to looking upward for answers or hope, now faced a firmament that was unraveling. Major observatories Alma, Keck, and the newly operational Obelisk Array stationary orbit turned their lenses to where the stars had disappeared. But they didn't find silence. They found noise, not the usual background noise of the cosmos, but impossible gravitational fluctuations, as if the very fabric of space was being twisted, irregularly contorted by something that wasn't a black hole or exotic matter. The data showed an increasing pattern of disturbances between galaxies, in regions previously classified as empty. But now they were in motion, subtle motion. Slow, but with a constant vector, toward the Milky Way. Theories emerged of hidden supermassives, dimensional collisions, fractures in the quantum mesh of the universe, none held under scrutiny. Then came the most unsettling part. Instruments detected a kind of shadow, an absence of light, not caused by mass, but by something that absorbed not just photons, but information. Where it passed, sensors failed, data was corrupted, satellites froze. Digital reality itself seemed to unravel in the face of this invisible presence. At the European Institute of Astrophysics, a researcher classified the phenomenon as a conscious obscurity event. But the name didn't stick. The name that gained traction behind the scenes, in the hidden reports of the scientific community, was another. The Veil of Stars, not for poetry, but because it looked exactly like that, an invisible veil spreading across the cosmos, erasing everything it touched, as if wiping the slate of existence. And if it was approaching, then what came after wouldn't just be darkness. It would be forgetting. In the vastness between galaxies lies an abyss never fully understood, a region where space is so diluted that light takes billions of years to cross. We always believed that there, in the interstellar vacuum, nothing could exist, but now something moves there, and it is not natural. With filtered and recalibrated data, a disturbing discovery emerged. The obelisk array's sensors picked up synchronized gravitational disturbances originating from multiple points between distant galactic clusters. These points had no visible mass, produced no light, yet distorted everything around them as if they were holes in reality itself. The patterns weren't random. They came from opposite directions, and were converging toward our local system. But even more frightening, the shape of these disturbances suggested intentionality. It wasn't a cosmic wave, it was something with purpose, with a path, with consciousness. Some scientists began theorizing about non-matter-based entities, life forms made of void and inverted density, something that doesn't live in the universe, but in its cracks. And these entities seem to be moving like predators, not at absurd speed, but with the precision of something that doesn't hurry because it knows time is on its side. A physicist from the Tianjin Center for Space Research made an analogy that went viral in closed scientific circles. It's as if the universe were an aquarium, and something on the outside finally realized there's something swimming inside, that something is approaching. And the only certainty now is that interstellar space is not empty. It was just waiting. For centuries, constellations gave us direction, hope, stories. They were there when we were just shadows around campfires, and when we reached orbit for the first time. But now, they were falling into oblivion. Each week, more star patterns vanished. Entire constellations ceased to exist before human eyes, not covered by clouds, not hidden by known cosmic phenomena, but removed from the sky, as if someone was deliberately erasing memories from reality. One remained. Orion. The last to remain visible in both hemispheres, the only one resisting the advance of the veil. Scientists wondered why. The gravitational pattern around it was unstable, yes, but not yet marked by the absolute distortion that consumed other regions. Theologians began interpreting Orion as a symbol, the hunter, the guardian, the one who watches over gods and monsters. For some, a sign of resistance; for others, of doom. The world, even divided, paused to look. Thousands of telescopes turned to Orion. But one night, without warning, Betelgeuse blinked. Not a supernova, not a collapse. Just an intermittent flicker, as if something passed behind it. Impossible, by all laws of astrophysics. Yet it was recorded by 10 different observatories. A shadow that didn't block light but drained it, a shapeless form, like a fold in the sky itself. After that, the constellation began to fade. Not all at once, but like a memory slowly fading from the mind of someone in a coma. Then came the theory that changed everything. The veil doesn't erase stars. It erases the memory that they ever existed. Fear stopped being astronomical. It became existential, because if what's coming can erase not just light, but memory. What remains of humanity when even the sky that saw us born forgets we ever were? It came as a weak radiation beam, almost indistinguishable from cosmic background noise. But it wasn't noise. It was structure. At the ALTAIS-6 research station, an orbital lab dedicated to capturing primordial universe oscillations, algorithms detected something no human would see with the naked eye. A rhythmic pulse, mathematically coherent, coming from one of the veiled zones where the Lyra constellation once existed. The team believed it was an echo from distant quasars, but the data persisted. And changed. It wasn't a reflection. It was a pattern in mutation, something learning, adjusting, molding its own emission, so it could be understood. In less than 72 hours, the pulse became a recognizable sequence. Prime numbers, Fibonacci, universal physical constants. The universe was speaking, or rather someone, or something, was trying to speak through it. But then the pattern broke. The numbers began repeating with errors, as if a language was trying to emerge, but corrupted by something older than language itself. When converted into visual spectrograms, the data formed images that resembled deconstructed constellations, twisted lines, like ruined maps of the sky. And at the center of each one, a hollow circle. An eye, or perhaps a mouth. The signals were sent to major space agencies. Most classify them as random phenomena. But in more restricted circles, the impossible hypothesis gained ground. The veil is aware of our observation, and now ... it is observing us. More than that, it had responded. But that transmission was only the beginning. Because after it, the dreams began, and reality began to bend. It didn't take long for the phenomenon to become more than just astronomical. From the moment of transmission, something changed quietly, like everything the veil did. Researchers tied to ALTAIR-6, decoding team members, even civilian observers who followed the signals in real time, began reporting identical dreams, not nightmares in the usual sense, but experiences too vivid to be merely mental. They described the same scenario: a sky bleeding stars in reverse, a field without a horizon, where constellations were swallowed by a shadow shaped like a rippling veil, and in the background, an impossible sound like the universe breathing. They all described the same scene: a sky bleeding stars in reverse, a horizonless field where constellations were swallowed by a shadow shaped like a wavering veil, and in the background, an impossible sound as if the universe was breathing. For the last time, some woke up in panic. Others ... didn't want to wake up at all. The sensation was described as a deep acceptance, as if forgetting offered peace. Psychiatrists affiliated with the UN began investigating the cases they called the pattern dream void syndrome. But the symptoms didn't stop in dreams. Some affected individuals began forgetting names, then places, then themselves. Brain scans revealed something terrifying. The visual cortex in many was fading, as if the brain were forgetting how to see the sky. Childhood memories vanished. Familiar faces became blurs, and among the most affected, a recurring phrase emerged: "We were never meant to look." At the Oslo Institute of Neuroscience, a researcher studying the reports found something even more disturbing. Fragments of the dreams resembled mathematical structures present in the veil's signals, as if the dream itself were a channel of reception or infection. A hypothesis no one dared record officially began to whisper among the most lucid scientists. The veil is communicating not with words, but with presence, and the human mind is already listening. What began in the sky ... now touched the ground. Isolated reports, once dismissed as delusion or coincidence, began to be taken seriously. Specific locations around the planet scattered across deserts, mountains, even urban zones began to stop reflecting any form of light. They were small, circular regions with blurred edges. No reflection, no sound, not even wind. Drones sent to the center of these anomalies lost signal instantly, as if, upon crossing that threshold, they ceased to exist. In Mongolia, an entire village vanished overnight. No evacuation, no destruction, just ... a perfectly circular space where nothing remained. Not even time. Satellites captured data anomalies. Sensors rebooted themselves when attempting to record the area. It was like trying to measure the vacuum of a forgotten thought. The world reacted with silence. There were no weapons to fight the invisible, no manuals to deal with an enemy that didn't attack. It redefined the rules of what is real. Researchers began to theorize that the holes were not portals or physical rifts, but symptoms of the veil's approach. Perhaps it wasn't moving through space ... but through the structure of perception itself. And if that were true, then it wasn't the universe that was disappearing. It was our ability to perceive it. After all, what is reality if not a construct upheld by memory, light, and time? And if the veil was unraveling all three at once, to show us what the world is like when no one is left to see it. Faced with the silent collapse of reality, something unthinkable happened. Nations stopped fighting and started listening. In a closed conference beneath Antarctica, at the subglacial Noumea 3 complex, the boldest initiative in human history was born. Project Argo. The name was symbolic. In ancient myth, Argos was the ship that sailed into unknown seas. Now, humanity would have its own vessel to navigate into the void between galaxies. The mission: to reach the source of the signals, enter the veil zone, and attempt to understand or halt its progression. The ship, named Prometheus Vox, was built with quantum shielding, augmented reality systems, and an experimental AI capable of reprogramming itself against perceptual distortion. But perhaps the strangest element was its crew: 6 individuals. No military, no politicians, no traditional commanders. On board were an astrophysicist specialized in reality collapses, a former priest turned exotheologist, a blind linguist with synesthetic abilities, an engineer who had survived a null zone, a boy, the only human immune to the dream transmissions, and a pilot who had died and returned with memories that weren't his. This was the last hope, to cross the veil and try to understand what lives on the other side. During launch, the entire world watched in silence, but as the Vox accelerated toward the void, the blind linguist, seated in his neural interface chair, whispered something not in the protocols. "We're not going to the veil. It called us. And now, it wants to see us up close." The journey began. And no one knew if there would be a return, because maybe crossing the veil was the same as forgetting you ever existed. Prometheus Vox crossed the line of the invisible. There was no light, no distortion, no warning. Just an instant. When no one remembered the time before. Onboard footage showed the crew in absolute silence. Not asleep, not awake, but trapped in a space where the senses sight, sound, touch had disconnected from logic, as if the laws of reality inside the veil weren't merely distorted, but rusted. The ex-priest was the first to speak. He said he saw words forming in the void, as if space itself were trying to pronounce memories of a universe that failed to be born. The astrophysicist detected something even more disturbing. The background radiation inside the veil was negative. It didn't radiate heat. It stole temperature from systems, from bodies, from thoughts. The pilot began to repeat phrases he had never learned. The boy whispered impossible numbers, and the linguist, crying, declared that the language he was hearing was never meant to be understood by living beings, because on that side of the veil, everything is corrupted memory, fragments of unimplemented physical laws, existence codes rejected by a universe that chose to forget, and among those, failures. Something watches. Not with eyes, but with absence, a presence so ancient, so prior to form, that its mere attention unravels what is real. "This isn't death," said the engineer. "It's what comes before existence is born." And we invaded the universe's rough draft. The ship, now still, drifted slowly in a space with no stars, no time. And in the center of the darkness, a sound pulsed, not in audible frequencies, but within each crew member's mind, a sound that doesn't want to be heard, but now has heard us back. They were no longer alone. In the unmoving darkness of the veil, something revealed itself, not through form, but through absence. It was not a being. It was a concept with weight, a gravitational center from which no memory escaped. The crew of Prometheus Vox stared at what they could only describe as an eye made of silence. There was no iris, no pupil, only a sphere of non-light, surrounded by extinguished galaxies and rejected laws. And the moment they looked. Something began to unhappen. The ship stopped recording vital signs. Crew member names began vanishing from the system. Mission logs began to erase, not by technical failure, but as if the universe were correcting an error the eye did not see. It forgot, and everything it observed was erased from reality. The last transmission sent beyond the veil, fragmented and unreadable to nearly all, carried a single surviving phrase, spoken by the boy who had until then never spoken clearly since departure. The light wasn't born here. It came to remind us that once. There was an attempt. Then, all ceased. Prometheus Vox vanished. The veil zone stopped emitting any signal, but on Earth, the impact was immediate. The remaining stars began to reappear, as if the veil had closed. Its eyes. No one knows why. Some say the mission succeeded. Others, that whatever dwells in the veil had simply had enough. But the dreams continue. The silence in the cosmos feels denser. And among specialists, a new hypothesis haunts like an echo. The universe isn't being erased. Its single quote says being forgotten by whatever created us. And perhaps the veil was never an invader. Perhaps it is merely the gaze of something that was never meant to awaken.